I know I've teased before on my channel women working in male-dominated workplaces, women in sports, and this is still a breaking story, so a lot of you probably haven't seen it unless you're really honed in on the topic. But yet again, the New York Mets of Major League Baseball have been exposed in an article in the Athletic publication. One of their top executives was basically rehired after multiple accusations of sexual harassment. To be quite honest, for personal reasons, I have not read the complete article, and also for personal reasons, I don't need to, because I already know what it's going to say. And I kind of wanted to talk more broadly about male-dominated workplaces and women working in sports, because I think a lot of conversations around women in sports involve females playing sports and Title IX discussions in college sports, and women having access, like the recent controversy in the NCAA basketball tournament where the women had the rack of weights and the men had the big weight room. So I think a lot of women in sports conversations surround the players and the access that the athletes have, which is wonderful. My expertise lies in the women that are working within the front offices of sports. And so I wanted to open your minds a little bit and kind of explain what that looks like and why the situation is the way it is and why you keep seeing these exposés on front offices from the Washington football team. They had a huge scandal. Emily Applegate was one of their whistleblowers. She's a very brave former employee that you should definitely be following on Twitter. Melissa Weishaupt blew the whistle on Mark Cuban and the Dallas Mavericks several years ago. So there's a lot of great women who have stepped up and told their stories about what happened to them in sports front offices. I hope that this will enlighten you a little bit and that you'll be more supportive of the women who are brave enough to speak up and name names. Just to recap, The Athletic released an article this morning about more misdeeds by front office personnel at the New York Mets, like pregnancy discrimination, sending inappropriate text messages, making wildly inappropriate comments, just a ton of sexual harassment, an unbearable hostile work environment. I'm not going to discuss any of my personal experiences yet because I'm very far away from doing that. But I want to explain the mentality behind that, maybe explain away some of your confusion about why in this story and other stories there's HR departments, sometimes led by a woman, that are involved in this. And in this case, the executives are being rehired by the team, even though the team is aware of the behavior. I think a good place to start is that there's the question on the part of the men working in the industry when it comes to NFL, MLB, NHL, NBA. The men that are leading these businesses and are working within the organization, even at lower levels, they're questioning from day one why the women even want to be there. You women are not down there on the ice, on the field, on the pitch, playing this game. Women are not playing NHL hockey. Women are definitely not playing NFL football. So why would you want to be up here in the office working here if you women aren't playing downstairs? It must mean that you have some kind of ulterior motive. Did you want to be a cheerleader or a girl dancing on the dugout and you weren't cute enough to do it, so this was the next best thing? Do you want to meet and marry a player? And are you a gold digger? Do you just want to be around a glamorous lifestyle? Those are the sexist questions that the men in the office have. They just don't understand why a woman would be interested in working in that environment. Of course, those are all ridiculous questions, because just as they were interested in the business of sports, and a large majority of them either did not play sports or were extremely bad at sports, They're interested in the business of sports. They're interested in that particular department they work in just as much as any girl. Just as many girls grow up hoping to work in a sports front office as boys. So that's a total misconception from the start from the other men in the office. But you have to think about it, that every woman working in a sports front office is starting off with that perception on her of she must have some ulterior motive of being there. She can't just be there because she wants to work in sports. That's crazy. And then you have scrutiny on you once you're in that office about what you look like, what you're wearing, how you present yourself every day, and that comes down to the emotions that you're displaying. You can't be too tough and you're a huge bitch, or you're too angry. You can't be too much of a pushover because then you're not tough enough to be in this tough industry. You certainly can't cry in the office. That is an absolute. Once you cry, at work, you've lost all credibility with these men that you're working with. Now, on the other hand, they're allowed to display as much anger as they want any time of day, as often as they like, because that's an appropriate, masculine emotion. Women have to think about what they're wearing, and for a lot of these sports, they're outside running around. Sports like baseball, you're really outdoors in the heat of the summer, and you're thinking about how to keep cool. And so women have to figure out ways to dress overly professionally without the men in the front office and the fans looking askance at her skirt's a little too short. So there's just a lot of scrutiny on the attitude, the presentation. The joke about no crying in baseball is really not that funny when you're a woman working in sports. Say that you're working in basketball, front office employees in basketball tend to be very dressed up on game day. So the men from the front office always wear a nice suit, and then the women will wear a suit too. But you have to think about, how short is your skirt? Do you wear pants or a skirt as part of your suit? You're probably going to have to wear heels, which means that your body and your feet are going to hurt really badly all night and the next day, and you probably have a game the next day. Whereas the guys, they can get away with a comfy flat shoe. I think a lot of people would assume that the fans would be the biggest challenge for a woman working in professional sports. The drunken fans bothering you, sexually harassing you and catcalling you, being sloppy drunk all over you during a game. And that is absolutely not the case. The real pressure, sexual harassment, stress, microaggressions, and problems come from within, from your peers and colleagues and coworkers and bosses and just the general environment around you in the front office. Your colleagues are the hard part. And when you're reading all these exposés from the Washington team and from the Dallas Mavericks expose a few years ago and these other recent stories that are constantly coming out. So when you read this Mets piece in The Athletic, don't be surprised, don't be taken aback. It's not a special story. It's not an unusual story in sports. You could go to any other league and find the same story at another team in another city. You could change the names of the people, and if you could convince the women to talk, it would be the same tale of woe. At the end of the day, women just don't want to speak up because the retaliation is too great, and the retaliation is swift and it is brutal. It is a retaliation of many powerful people. The mob mentality grows so rapidly to where even the men who might traditionally be the ones you think of as allies can get swept up in that mob as well. I think that there need to be more conversations about what's happening to women working under the umbrella of the actual front offices of professional sports. We have great representation when it comes to women playing these sports and breaking in as, coaches and referees and working on the sidelines and even, playing the sports themselves and maybe even breaking into the professional leagues one day. But I just wish that somebody could step up as a champion for people identifying as female who are working in professional sports front offices, because otherwise there's just going to be one too many of these front office scandals, and little girls are going to see one too many articles like this Mets piece today and just turn away. But it's a hard day. When these days come along, they're tough. because it takes me, right back to my experiences, which were very, very hard. I think it's been therapeutic to chat with you about this today and let you know why these things happen. In conclusion, unless you've been through the situation yourself, don't trigger yourself, but if you haven't been in that situation, I recommend that you go read the Athletic article or recaps on Twitter about the newest stories regarding the New York Mets. And now you can look at it through the lens of how I've described it, where the men in these sports front offices don't know why the women are there, don't want them there, wish they would all disappear, are looking at the women as sexual objects only, don't see any other use for them there, don't believe that they don't believe that they should be taken seriously. This is not isolated. This is happening every day with most professional teams. Just think good thoughts for all these women who are staying in the business and fighting hard every day, even though they're not wanted. These women are tough, badass characters who I admire, and you should too. Thank you for listening to me. This is a subject very close to my heart. Mind the gap.